Hi, everybody. Attorney Lee Schlamowitz here. Today, we're going to try something a little bit different. You can probably see on my screen flashing by are some uncharacteristically colorful animated screens. These are from the video game Fortnite. Recently, I've had the opportunity to dive into the intellectual property environment around this game, which is fascinating. If you're involved in Fortnite and Epic, then you know there is a culture of customization, sort of like cottage industries around this game. Today, I want to talk a little bit about the use of Epic Games intellectual property, the fan content policy, what it means for those of you who are listening that may be creators in this business. Stick around because understanding these nuances could protect you from an unexpected legal battle, even help you just structure a better deal. Why does this matter? And the reason is that Fortnite is more, as you can see, it's more than just a game. Epic designed it to be an entire creative economy, and there are thousands of creators and businesses that are using this content to market products. They're looking to build careers, but based on my review of the current intellectual property landscape that surrounds Fortnite, I think there is a significant gray area when it comes to the legality of using Fortnite assets. Specifically, today I'm going to talk about Epic's fan content policy and Fortnite Island creator rules, which dictate how you can utilize Epic's intellectual property. There is something of what I would call a passive aggressive licensing model. And I think it's an open secret that anybody who is involved with Fortnite and the assets and the intellectual property probably recognizes. Sort of the idea is creativity is encouraged, but there's this legal ambiguity that can be enforced at any time if Epic so chose to do that. And I think that gives rise to what I think is a fascinating environment for intellectual property, but also potentially, let's call it a problematic climate for those folks that are making a living, that are deriving income, or that are otherwise deeply invested in this community. So, the first thing I want to do is talk to you about what the rules actually say. So, what does Epic actually allow, and what does Epic prohibit? Let me break down the two key documents that affect the work in this area. So, the first document that I want to go over with you a little bit is this fan content policy. Now, the origin of this document is the reality that Epic is generating intellectual property assets. Now, what do I mean by that? You've got various skins, characters, all kinds of customization that's originating directly with Epic. Epic is putting it out into the world, into its environment, and saying to its users, hey, you can utilize this stuff. This document that I have on your screen in front of you is the fan content policy. And this document tells you how you can use those intellectual property assets. Now, I have put these blue boxes on here so that the important issues here can be highlighted. Specifically, what Epic is saying in this fan content policy is that you can create fan content, you can create derivatives, you can create what they're calling fan art, artwork, photographs, videos, and other materials, and Epic IP related websites that are freely accessible to the public. So, some of you, as you hear that, may be familiar with that being out there on the web as part of the community. And it's sort of necessary that these things can be liberally published and modified and customized because that's what Epic is encouraging. I'm old enough to remember the release of the original Unreal, which is the spiritual precursor to Fortnite. And it was a similar idea all the way back then. I think that was 1998, which I'm sure none of you remember. But at that time, Epic sort of fostered and cultivated a community just like this one. And so this is now in the Fortnite realm what they are encouraging. And what I've highlighted here in this fan content is a really important piece under 1.4. Without belaboring it over and over again, Really, what this content policy exists to do is to prohibit the use of Epic's intellectual property for your commercial purposes. So it says fan content must have no commercial monetary objective. As an exception to this, individual fans are permitted to monetize web videos, such as YouTube, with advertisements so long as those videos otherwise meet the requirements of this policy. But generally speaking, the threshold is if you're taking Epic's intellectual property for the purpose of making money, you've probably violated the Epic fan content policy. And without belaboring it, you can see they kept it real simple in Section 5 what they're going to do. It says Epic reserves the right to take legal action against you if you misuse their IP. So that's what you're up against in the Epic fan content policy. So now I'm going to talk about the second document other than the fan content policy, and this is the Fortnite Island Creator Rules. Now, these rules specifically apply to those of you that are making your own Fortnite islands, and there is a provision in here that talks about promotion. So I'm going to go down, I believe it's 3. There we go, 3.1.6. Now, this is where things get interesting because, as I just told you, in the fan content policy, you are not allowed to make money on the using Epic's intellectual property. But 3.1.6 tells us when creating promotional materials for your island, you must only show outfits or other items that are owned by Epic Games. And so we've got this sort of conflict. We've got this internal conflict, and this can cause some real issues. The contradiction is one policy restricts monetization while the other encourages it under certain conditions. And this is why I think so many of the Fortnite community are kind of operating in what I'm calling this legal gray area. So, what does this conflict and this gray area mean for those of you that are generating the kinds of content that I'm talking about today? So, number one, if you're monetizing Fortnite content, you need to be aware that Epic could, at any time, enforce their fan content policy against you. Now, I've looked into this to see if this is common. I don't see many examples. It looks like Epic is primarily putting its resources toward cheating when it comes to litigation, but it's not impossible. So you need to weigh that risk, understand it, and be prepared to pivot if the opportunity comes up. Number two, if you're working with a brand or you're a brand working with a Fortnite content creator, you need to be looking to make sure your agreements with these creators or with the brands include clear indemnification clauses and also, I would say, disclaimers and other common contractual terms to sort of identify that this is a potential issue and to either shift or mitigate the risk as a contracting party. So this ensures that if Epic does ever enforce its policies, the legal responsibility won't fall entirely on you. And if you're part of this core community and you're aware of this gray area, I think it's a best practice to educate those who may be kind of coming in to the community that look, this is what's going on with the community, and this is a gray area, and then you paper around that. It both protects you, and I think it educates your participants in the community. So the last thing I want to leave you with are my legal recommendations. And as an attorney who specializes in IP, what I recommend is number one, kind of riding the coattails of what I just stated. Contracts are really important in this space. If you're a creator, you're a brand, I think your contracts need to accommodate and outline these IP risks and responsibilities. Number two, indemnification clauses are contractual provisions which allow one party to assume risk on behalf of another party. And so those can be used, I think, in either creative or ways that just make sense given what we understand the risk to be here. And I think those are an important tool for those that are navigating this particular issue. The next thing you can do is keep your eye on Epic's collection of cyber documents. It's end user license agreement, terms of service, fan content policy that we went over today, the island creator rules, because they may be updated, they may evolve, and in the evolution or updating of those documents, Epic may tilt its cards and show us either A, what it's thinking, or that this issue is going to be mitigated internally by them, which my personal opinion is that if they were to do that, that it would cultivate and encourage greater diversity and creativity in the community that Epic, I think, values very much. And so, with all that said, if you're creating Fortnite content, you're working with brands, you just want to make sure you're legally covered, I'd love to help. Don't hesitate to reach out to me. Follow me on the various social media platforms. And I can break down key issues both in Fortnite and intellectual property generally. If you found this useful, don't hesitate to share this with your community. And as always, I am interested and thrilled by any feedback. I thank you so much. Take care.